Good morning. How are you?
Baruch Hashem. Fresh, brand new.
That's right. New and improved.
Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, Terumais, Pedig Dalid, Halacha Ches, concluding the fourth chapter, and starting the fifth chapter, learning Halacha Aleph. I don't think we'll get through the whole Mishnah today, but we'll get through a big part of Halacha Aleph with the help of Hashem. We're learning today Daf Mem Hey. We left off on Daf Mem Dalid Amid Beis, 7 lines before the bottom of the Amid. To quickly review, we are learning various scenarios in where a person has 2 different boxes. Each one contains 50 saw of Truma. And one saw, it's 50 saw of Chulin. So you have a total of 100 saw of Chulin, but they're divided into 2 boxes, etc. You have 1 saw of Truma that falls into one of these 2 boxes. The Mishnah in Halacha Ches told us the general rule that we consider the 2 boxes combined, which is amazing, which therefore means that the Truma that fell in is batal. And as we keep on mentioning, especially in the last year, that even when you have bittul, so you do not have miduma, there is the rule of ma'ala or maila umatir, which means that since there was 1 soft truma that belonged to a kohen, you're not allowed to simply keep it because it's not yours. Now, even though you don't know where it is, you have to remove 1 and give it to the kohen. Maila umatir. Now, the Gemara gave scenarios beginning with the Braisa and then in the Gemara where we don't always apply the law of the Mishnah. There will be scenarios in which these 2 boxes, or let's say 2 storehouses, 2 storerooms that are in 2 different houses, or according to the Chachamim, even 2 boxes, but they are in 2 different cities. There are scenarios that these 2 piles of Chulin do not combine. And still, we will have to now work that out concerning the law of Maila Umater, as we'll learn over here in the beginning of today's daf. I know we are a little bit behind again on daf Mem Dalad Amid Beis, 7 lines before the bottom of the Amid. The Gemara, before the conclusion of this chapter, will go back to the story of the Mishnah, the Haggadah of the Yerushalmi, where the Tana Rabbi Yossi paskent a din in front of Rabbi Akiva over there with the 50 bundles of Chulin, and another bundle that had half Truma. Remember that? So you can view it as a bundle has to be nullified, there's only 50. Or since the bundle that fell in had half Truma, half Chulin, we can view all of the bundles as half and half. So you have 102 half bundles. Well, 102 half bundles is more than enough ratio, right, to be mevatel the half bundle of Truma that fell into the 101 half bundles. And indeed, Rabbi Yossi was lenient, and the Gemara has a couple of very important comments and very interesting information on that psak of Rabbi Yossi. That will conclude the 4th chapter. And the 5th chapter, I just want to share right now a few words of introduction. Rule number 1, the rule that midrabanan, Truma needs to have the ratio of 100 chulin against 1 to nullify it, is true even if the Truma is Temeya. Now, just to know, Truma Temeya may not be eaten, of course, never by a non-kohen, not even by the kohen. It has to be burnt. However, unlike other Isurei Hanoah, where burning means you got to get rid of it, the burning process itself is something that a kohen could derive benefit from. Right? You need to have fuel, whether you want to warm your home, whether you want to warm up your food. But Truma Tameya has to be burnt. Now, what's important to know is the Mishnah will give us first 3 cases where there was a mixture of Truma in Chulin, but you did not have the ratio needed, and therefore everything is Meduma. Now, everything meduma would mean that everything has to be treated with the stringencies of the truma. So what would happen if truma temeya fell in, right? So l'chora, now everything will have to be burnt, and indeed, so says the Mishnah, plus, we're going to get to that. Another thing just to remember when we learned this whole Mishnah, that's speaking about either the truma or the chulin are tamei with the ratio, without the ratio. For truma, for tuma, to be imparted, there are two basic preconditions. Number one, if the tuma is coming from food, if you have food that's tamei, it could impart tuma only if it has this size of a kibetza or more. Number two, basic rules that for other foods to acquire tuma prior to contact, they have to become mukhshard. They have to be made susceptible to becoming tamei. If either of these two conditions are not met, even when there is a mixture of tamei food and non-tamei food and tahar food, the tahar food will not become tamei. But coming back to our Mishnah, the Mishnah will first give three cases where the ratio is not there. One of the two are tamei. Then the Mishnah is going to learn, let's see if we can get all of that today, where you have scenarios where you do have the right ratio. But here again, Chevra, you have one of these two items are tamei, and now we're going to have to teach the laws of maila umater in the case where some of the items are tamei, and we're going to see how that's a big component that we never mixed into the basic halachas. That will be as far in as we'll get in the Mishnah of the 5th chapter. But let's go back now. Daf Mem Dalid Amid Beis. I know we are a little bit behind. We started a few minutes early. Stam Lohoid, it says in the Hayom Yom that today, which is called God's Day, there is an inyan to wake up a little bit earlier. That means that if you're living in the East Coast over there in Florida, you start learning a little bit after 9 a.m. That's already early. By us, right? We started early. Bekitzer, At Omar, guys, you see it, it's by the dot. It's 7 lines before the bottom of the Lamed. So At Omar, Kupas Mailis, Umugurasena Mailois. So now that we established that the general rule of the Mishnah is only applied by boxes, and as we explained the logic, because boxes that belong to the same owner will likely be mixed at a point, and its likelihood of getting mixed altogether. That future possibility allows us to define the present based on the future. And by the way, that's the best way for us to be judged. The best way for us to be judged is that when you look at a person in the present, you see their potential future, because all of us have an unbelievable potential future, right? Once you did it, it's limited. The future, anything can happen. Masha'enkin, if you have two storerooms in two different houses, since the possibility for a person to move the contents of one storeroom to the other is much less, so we don't combine them. So now, hey Chavida, let's give, the Gemara wants to speak out a scenario. Let's read inside the Gemara. If you have two storerooms, again, the case is always that each one does not have the amount needed for bittul. L'mashal, each one only has 50 some. So you own joint 100, but it's divided. The nafla saw truma l'toich achas mehen, and you don't know into which one. So what did we learn in the Braisa? What we learned in the Braisa is that we don't say they combine, because the chulin are not in boxes. The chulin are slang in a storeroom. And for people to move contents of one storage room into another in a different home is something not likely enough for us to say halachically we view them as if they're already mixed. Now, since you don't know into which megura fell the truma, shteim asurais, the word asurais means they're both meduma. Meduma is not usher. Meduma is usher to a non-kohen, just to make it clear. Okay, now the Gemara is going to bring a detail of what we just learned in the previous year. Number one, Chevra, when one is not allowed to be mevatel iser, which is generally the rule, ein mevatel in iser lechatchila, there is a rabbinic penalty that if someone did add the davar hamutar to be mevatel, the davar ha'asur, it's ineffective. But that's only if you added it b'mezid. If it fell b'shoigig, then it's mevatel it. So let's come back over here. You have storage room aleph, storage room base. Riba alachas mihanu bitla b'shoigig. Now, let's say that someone, not knowing that it's meduma, added into storage room aleph another 50 saw of chulin or more. Okay, so now aleph is resolved, meaning now you have bittul. But remember, bittul doesn't mean you can eat it. You still have to do the final step of maila umater. And the person did it, maila umater. Now, storage room base is still meduma. What happens if now bishoigeg storage room base also has another 50 chulin added to it? It's also going to be nullified. Okay, so what's the chiddush? Do you have to do maila umater from storage room base? there would be a logic to say, you don't know where the truma fell. Could be the truma fell into Beis. And therefore, what you did before by Aleph, who says it should work for Beis, don't forget, we're not combining them. When they are two Megures in two different homes, we don't combine them. But the Gemara says we don't say that. We don't say that. You know why? Because the reason why you have to be Maila Umater, it begins as a Choshen Nishbadin. It begins with a simple financial rule, which is that I owned 100. The Kohen owned 1. It's not fair for me to end up owning 101. How? Okay, it's nullified, but it's not mine. So I have to compensate the Kohen. Since it begins as a law of financial compensation, I don't care if I'm giving it from the right pile. Therefore, what we say is, since you gave back to the Kohen the 1, now let's read it inside. Chiddush is, not only is it now muter, right, Megura Beis, but ve'eina tzricha aliyah, you don't need the Maila Umater. You don't need to do it. Why? Shekvar also truma, because the Kohen was already compensated. Gewaldig. Makes a lot of sense. I'm saying there's a chiddush here, but the Gemara has to speak it out. Now we're moving on to the final part of the Mishnah, and with this we will conclude this chapter. That Amar Rabbi Yosi, Maise, the story that he said was, first of all, Rabbi Yosi took credit by the fact that he gave a psak in front of Rabbi Akiva, of course with his permission. The fact that Rabbi Akiva did not make any comments, that's a raya that he gave the correct psak din. And there was a big chiddush in what happened. Someone owned 50 bundles of chulin vegetables. Then they had one bundle, same size of the others, but that bundle had half chulin, half truma. That bundle was already meduma. But how much of it was truma? 50%, half. That one bundle that was problematic fell into the 50 chulin bundles. So you would have said, what do you mean? 1 in 50 is not enough, right? You have to have the ratio of 100 to 1, not 50 to 1. So Rabbi Yosi said no. Then we can look at it as if they were unbundled. If they would all be unbundled, then the ratio needed for bittul you have. Or let me word it this way. Instead of looking at it as 50 bundles or 51 bundles, don't forget the one that fell in was only half truma. Let me look at it as 102 half bundles. 102 half bundles, one of the 102 was truma. 101 halves are chulin. You have more than the needed ratio. And that's exactly what Rabbi Yosi said. So says the Gemara, Tani, we learned. Now, Rabbi Yosi, don't forget, is the one that gave the psak din. We're learning a braisa that's going to speak about the same Tana, but he's going to say words that will throw a wrench in this whole thing. Tani, we learned in a braisa, Rabbi Yosi Omer, that when we say in the case of the bundles that it's nullified. Now, guys, these words will be corrected, but let me just read the words as we had it initially. Balul Maila. If you mingled the bundle, the understanding now, Vlad, is that you unbundled everything, which, by the way, you would not be allowed to do lachatchila. If you mamish mingled it all together, so now it's batal shkoyach, because now you have the volume of the ratio. But v'she'ena balul, but if they're not co-mingled together, then eina maila. Now look inside the top marafulda. Balul im nivlala hatruma b'teicha chulin. If you mamish mix the truma together, then mailan achulin as hatruma be'echad umeya. Abel ki loy nivlala. But if it wasn't mingled, then eina mala. Now the Gemara says right away, what are you talking about? Why do you have to mingle it? First of all, Rabbi Yosi's din is in general. And let me go back 1 second. Rabbi Yosi's din in the Braisa is not about a bundle. It's about in general. And guys, we already mentioned this in the last year. Right? So by liquids, we said, Lukula Alma, when one ratio of Truma falls into 100, liquid, bottle. But what happens if it's not liquid? Then we take a learn. That was that whole thing. That was that whole Mishnah. Maybe we don't look at it as if it was mingled. Rabbi Yosi Taka said that. Rabbi Yosi says only if it's mingled. Problem is, if you only allow the ratio to work when it's Davar Yavish, when it's mingled, so why was he so lenient by the bundles? They're not mingled. They're separated. That's right. We have a mingled bundle. We don't know what part of that bundle is truma, what part is not. So that bundle is vaday a problem. forget about the fact, it's when that bundle fell in, I'm not even talking about when you know that it's on the top of the 50. No, let's say it got mixed in the 50. So what? But the bundles are not mixed. No, it's if Rabbi Yossi is the one that insists that the ratio of 100 to 1 only works when it's mamish balul, that goes against what he said in the Mishnah. Did we not learn in our Mishnah? Amar Rabbi Yossi ma'aseh bo lefnei Rabbi Akiva b'chamishim agudah shel yarek shenafla achas l'toichen, another one, a 51 fell in, and that new one was chetzion truma and half chulin. And v'amarti, and Rabbi Yossi was saying that I paskened lefanav in front of Rabbi Akiva, that tala means it's nullified. And now the bundles are not mixed. Even if the one is all farmished, it's somewhere in the 50. So what? But every bundle is bundled as a bundle. It's separated. It appears to contradict. Answers the Gemara, this is great. Haveinon bayon lemeimar. We muzmin zagin, we have to say, and this really goes back to the logic that we gave all the way back in Halacha Ches, or Halacha Zayin, in the second part of Halacha Zayin, when the Mishnah introduced, Halacha Ches, when you had the two homes, and you don't know which one it fell into. And then we had the Rabbi Shimon says, even in two different cities. And all of that is based on what? What is the likelihood for them to get mixed in the future? Now, however you put the number on it, when it hits a certain level of likelihood, that is where we say it's as if it's already mingled together. Masha'enkein, if the likelihood is not there, like we mentioned, if it's not in boxes, the product is laying on the ground in a storeroom. Why would a person completely empty out one storage room? Why would we say that? It's not so likely. Then we don't allow them to be viewed as if they're mixed together. In other words, whether we view that something is already commingled has to do with the likelihood of it getting mingled in the future. This is the way we will understand the Braisa that we just introduced. Answers the Gemara, even though the Lashon look doesn't have on bain lameimar. It's like a havamina, but that's a havamina, that's a maskana. Davar shuhu makbid al taruvasai. If the owner won't want for these different items to be commingled, if he wouldn't want for that to happen, that is where Rabbi Yossi says in the Braisa, we don't view them as if they are already commingled. And Einamala, you're not going to have the ratio of 100 to 1, even if you have it physically, if it's not already commingled. The Gemara will give an example of an item that the owner will not want for it to get mingled one with the other. If the owner doesn't care if it gets commingled in the future, then Rabbi Yossi doesn't insist that it has to already be commingled. So let me go back to a pile. I have a pile of grain. The pile of grain has 100 saw. One saw of truma falls on its top, on the top of it. Why wouldn't the owner in the future mingle them? He would. If it's the same quality, if it's the same everything, of course he'll mingle them. He doesn't care if they get mixed up together. Rabbi Yossi will be from the Tanoim that hold that even though it's not lach b'lach, even though it's not physically now mingled, doesn't matter. He's not makbid. It's as if it's mixed. It is batel. And it's going to be mala. As an example, why would the owner be makbid or not? He gives a great halachic example. There's a physical example is easy. If the items don't go together, like if you're in the business of selling wheat or grain, and you have, we learned red grain, black grain, different qualities, why would you want them to be mingled? You would not. By the way, if it's different colors, it's not going to be bottled because you can discern them. But I'm saying if it's different quality that you can't discern, you don't want to mix it. Now, the Gemara is saying a bigger chiddush. Even if it's not something begashmias, it's a halachic reason. For example, kishus tameya, let's go with a cucumber. One tamei cucumber, and by the way, we're speaking about it's already a good introduction to the next chapter. We're speaking about a cucumber that's truma, that's tamei. What's the din of a cucumber that's truma, that's tamei? It has to be burnt. If it falls in l'toich meya kishuyim tohirin, falls into 100. Now the 100 are chulin. This is going to be a great intro to the next chapter. Now, if the cucumbers that are chulin, after they were disconnected from the ground, if they became wetted, b'retzoin haba'olim, ki yitain, ki yutan, with any one of the halachic 7 liquids, then they became tummy. If we don't know where the tummy cucumber is, we don't know where it is, right? So we say we don't know which one to touch. There's a doubt. The rule is safek tummy, but everything is tummy. Here we're speaking about that they're not tummy yet because the cucumbers that are chulin never became wetted with any one of the 7 liquids.
What do you mean ki'it and ki'utan?
I just want to remind everyone that it's not enough for the product, for the food to become wet. The Torah says, the Torah spells ki'yitain with yud, taf, langenun. And the vowels, we could read it ki'yutan. Ki'yutan would mean when you put water on the zera. Ki'yitain means if water fell on the zera, even though you didn't put it. And so do you have to put it, or is it enough if it fell? So the reconciliation, this is all Torah Shabal Peh, this is all the remes from the Torah Shabal. Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu that even if the product became wet, if it became wet without the owner's contentment, he would have preferred for it never to have become wet. Even though it became wet, it's not muhshir. Doesn't mean that he has to do it. So remember, it's raining and the water bounces off the wall and it falls on the product. Did he want it to get wet? Did he not want it to get wet? Okay. So if the cucumbers were not yet wet, the owner, mitzad the laws of Tuma und Tara, does not care if the Tamei cucumber gets mixed. He doesn't care. That's an example. Rabbi Yossi will say, even though you know the cucumber fell on top of the pile, the ratio is only if you combine all of the cucumbers. You combine them. Why do you combine them? Because since the owner doesn't care if they touch, the Tamei can touch every other cucumber, it will not impart Tuma, because the Tahar cannot acquire. It was never Mukhshar. So therefore, since he's not Makbit, it's Ke'ilu, we look as if it's already mixed, and therefore it's nullified. However, if the Tahar Chulin cucumbers, in our case, already were Mukhshar, he would never want for them to get touched. He would never want that. So if I'm the owner and I see my Tamei cucumber falling on top of the pile, I got a problem, and I don't know which top of the pile. I don't know where. The last thing that I'll do is I'll mix it up. Because currently, at least I know that anything deeper than the top layer is Vaday not Tamei. Just for the record, when the cucumber is Tamei, if everything is mukhshar, we don't say they all become tamei. We don't say that, because every cucumber goes down a notch. So it's chulin. So if I have a cucumber that's tamei, generally we're speaking about a food that's tamei on the level of a rishon. So for example, I'm a tamei meis, as most people are, means I'm an av. If I touch the truma or chulin, mukhshar cucumber, it becomes a rishon. Okay. This cucumber that's thrown on a pile, it's only metame, the other ones that touched it directly, and that becomes a sheni. Sheni, by chulin, cannot go further to a shlishi. So if I see the cucumber falling on top of the pile, and even though I don't know which top of the pile, I got a problem only with the outer layer. That's a problem. Anything in there is not a problem. I will not want to mix it. I won't want to mix it. Why would I want to ruin my top? Why would I make something tamei? I don't want to do that. And that is what Rabbi Yossi is saying, that in a case where the owner will be makbit for it to get mixed, goes together. Since you're makbit, then we say we don't look at it as if it's mixed. And even though that the pile has 100 cucumbers, it's not going to be as if it's already combined together. And let's come back to the case of the bundles. Must be that the case of the bundles, first of all, the truma was tahar. So even though they're bundled, the owner doesn't care if they are unbundled and they get mixed. Even though they're not unbundled, that's the chiddush of Rabbi Yossi. Whenever the owner is not makbid, it's as if it's mixed, combined on top of that, even though it's bundled. I don't care if it's bundled now. You might unbundle it. And therefore, the chiddush of Rabbi Yossi is that we allow for the bittul to take place. We allow for the bittul to be played. And all of this is just based, it's a beautiful concept, that when you look at the present, to be able to see the future in the present, I think is the best way to live, Pashut. We're speaking about not a negative person that sees the worst case scenario. That's the worst case to live. You can't live that way. Some people are that way. because people like hurting themselves. That's where it comes from. You're being mazik yourself. People do that the whole time, not others. We do it to ourselves more than any other people. But if you have more rachmanis, just to be normal, not to be optimistic, just to be normal, don't look at the worst case scenario. Look at what could be, and the more you can see the good that could be, the more it's already good. You walk into your business, you see how many clients could call you today to buy your product. Think that way, because it's true. That's right. And on that we say hadron haloch hamafrish. We conclude when we're coming back. Hadron means not hadron bye. Hadron means I'm so sad that I'm departing, that I'm already making a bli neder commitment that we're coming back. But now temporarily it's time to move on. We are beginning the fifth chapter, right? Perek Chamishi, Halacha Aleph, and we already gave the words of introduction when we began today's daf. So let's dive right in. So the Mishnah that we'll learn today will have the 3 cases where you do not have the ratio and 2 cases where you do have the ratio. What is new, we just had this before with the cucumbers, is that we never spoke about tuma. We only spoke about the ratio. Midairaisa, batal beroiv. Midrabanan, you have to have 100 to 1. Now we're going to add this nuance. One of the 2, both cases, one of the 2 will be tamei, and we'll see that makes a big nafkamina. That will affect everything. So let's go. So the Mishnah begins with the case that the truma, we're always giving the same mashal. You have 1 saw of truma. It fell into 100 saw. The first 3 cases where you don't have the ratio. You would need 100 saw to make bittul. You did not have that. But in addition, the saw of truma also is temeya. Shenafla lepachais mimeya chulin, and it fell into less than 100 chulin. I want to add the words. The chulin is tohira, or the 1 saw of truma temeya fell into less than 100 ma'aser ishain, or the 1 saw of truma temeya fell into less than 100 ma'aser sheni, less than 100 of hegdish. Hegdish. I'm talking about even kedushas mizbeach. If we're speaking about grain, just for the record, that karba mincha. Karba mincha is a big right mesachta menachas. We have all of the 5 general menachas, right? Even in karban yachid, 5 different types. Imagine, and that's made out of grain. In other words, there could be mamish grain that's going to make its way to the, even though you're not mekadosh it yet in the klei sharis, right? The karban mincha really had 2 times that it was consecrated. One is in the klei sharis, we call that the first klei sharis, and that's when you have the right amount of flour already. And then when you separate the kemitza, unless it belongs to a kohen, then everything is burned. You would put the kemitza on klei sharis number 2. But anyways, coming back over here, if you have a hegdish, that means a karban mincha. Now, whether they are tohoidin, whether they are tamein, regardless, says the Mishnah, a bomb statement, yirkavu. Yirkavu means, first of all, whenever it's meduma, whenever there is no bittul, the status of the truma applies to all. Truma that's tamei has to be burnt. So we say that now that it's meduma, now that there is no bittul, everything has to be destroyed or left to decay. And the Gemara is going to ask the bomb question that will leave for the Gemara. Why yirkavu? I get it. The Mishnah is trying to tell you that whenever it's meduma, so the status of the truma goes to everything else. At Khan, we were learning about truma tohoira. So we kept on saying that when you have meduma, you got to sell it to a kohen. That will be in this Mishnah. The kohen won't pay for the amount of truma. That has to be a gift. He will pay for the rest, the discounted price. Here, since the truma is tameya, so therefore everything else becomes like truma tameya. Fine, the Gemara is going to say, well, truma tameya could be burnt, and when you burn it, you can have hana'ah from it. That's the problem. The kohen takes truma tameya and he puts it in his fireplace, and he can use the heat in the home. He can put it under his chalon pot. So that's the big kasha. Why yirkavu? But just the toichen, what the Mishnah is saying is that the status of the Truma Tameya goes to everything else. We'll leave it at that. In this case, everything will have to be let to decay. Vlad has a smile. I don't know what he thought of a svara. Let's leave it open. How do we get there? Gosh, okay. Now, second case.
So Yerkiva means decay.
One second. A truma becomes tame. You're kidding? We're learning now the Rambam. We learned about yesterday in Yom Kippur, the chaver, the Amoritz. How does truma become tameya? By the owner didn't learn the Rebbe's takana. Very simple. And unbeknownst to him, then he chapped and he learned that oh my God, I was tame and I made my fruit tame. Very easy to make things tame. Very easy to make things tame. And then you found out, and this, of course, not bemazed, because you have to actually guard your truma. No difference. Once the truma is tame, makes no difference. Just to know. And this mixture was also b'shoigeg. Who wants to ruin their chulin? No.
If you have a bundle that's half and half, or
yes,
45%. So how do you determine which one is which, and how do you
before the okay? Well, I think if we keep the parakim separated, it's easier. Up until now, the Rebbe and the Mishnayos gave enough information, he felt, of telling you when it is nullified, when it's not nullified. However, that works. Now he's adding a new component. Yeah, I know we have to put it all together. If the truma is tameya, whenever it's not nullified, because you don't combine the storehouses, or the boxes are in different cities like Chachamim, whenever it's not combined, so then the status of the truma goes to everything else. It's even worse now. Now everything has to be destroyed. Yikavu means you can't use it, you can't burn it. Let it decay. Case number two. Case number two is the opposite. Let's go the opposite. That the truma, let's always use the amount of a saw. If that saw of truma was tahar, and again, it fell into less than 100 saw. Now, I want to go better. This case of the Mishnah is everything is tahar. We kept on speaking about it's meduma and you got to sell it to the kohen. We took it from the Mishnah. The daf mem hey omid beis. I'm happy we have enough time to learn this properly. So that's the chiddush that we already know. Yimachru la kohanim. Everything has to be sold to a kohen. Since it's not nullified, a non-kohen is not allowed to eat truma. Since you have a doubt, it's a mixture. You don't know, and it's not nullified. So a non-kohen will take any part of this mixture and he'll put it in his mouth. How can you do that? Maybe you're putting truma in your mouth. A non-kohen cannot eat any of it. On the other hand, you can't be mechayiv the owner to gift it all to a kohen. Why? He only owes a kohen one saw. So let's say you had 99, the worst case. If you would have a little bit more, it would be nullified, but you didn't have that. So you have a total of 100. So the Yisrael, the owner, can sell 99, not 100, 99 to a kohen. How much will he charge for the 99? These are the key words. B'demei truma. Demei truma means b'demei. It's a siman bracha. The rain. I'm saying that because there's rain. It's raining in the shul, and David Baruch Hashem stepped in the rain with his talis and everything beautiful. B'demei truma means just the way it works. That in life, something that has a limited market, things will be cheaper. It's like, who wants to go to Miami? Cheaper. Why it's not is completely lamata mitam v'das. But here in LA,
how cheaper? I'm curious. Cheaper, 10% or subsidized price?
It's not a 10%.
Regarding
not a 10%. A little bit cheaper. That's a bit, Now, chutz midmei oisasa, you cannot sell the whole thing because the amount of truma that was in there you owe to the kohen. So that's the line, and that's something that we kept on repeating. Now, the Mishnah wants to add more details in the second case, where everything was tahar, but you don't have the ratio. Think about that. So it's Ma'aseh Rishon. I want to add another detail. Whether it's still biyad the Yisrael owner or in the hands of a Levi. Makes no difference now, and we can review that. Because we're going to go with the Shita that says at least b'di'evet, that an owner, the Yisrael owner, is allowed to separate Trumas Ma'aseh. But let's go to a Levi, just make it simple. So I'm a Levi, and I have Truma. Not Trumas Ma'aseh, Truma. and it fell into my sedishin. Truma. The Maila in this case is, you see, selling, by the way, my sedishin I can sell. But here again, if I'm going to sell I'm a Levi. If I'm going to sell my sedishin, if I have to sell it only to a kohen because it's meduma, I can only charge the mei truma. The Rabbeinu HaKadosh is giving me an Eitza Toiva, how not to lose any money. So I have 99 my sedishin, one truma gedoyla. I have truma for whatever reason. I have truma, fell in there, got mixed. Yeah, of course, if I want as a Levi, I'm not worse than the Yisrael. I can sell the mixture and charge for 99 the discounted price. I can do that. I can do something better. What can I do better? Me as a Levi, lechatchila, l'kula alma, some of my edition has to become Trumas Meiser. Some of my mice. Now, if all I own is what I have in front of me, all I'll have to give is 10% from what I have in front of me. If I happen to be a popular Levi and many other people gave me a lot of other mice edition, if I have that much, and all of what I have of my edition represents 10% of all else, then I can do something even better. Because anyways, I have to give it away to a coin. I have to give away 10% of what I own. So if I have now, I'll get my mashal. I have 99 my edition, and I have one truma. The one truma I owe to the coin. Now the 99, if I have 990 out there, my edition, which means this 99 could represent is 10% of that, I can do even better. I can say, even though I don't know which part of it is truma and which part of it is my edition, I don't care. I know that 99 saw in here is my edition. You know what? This 99 is becoming Trumas Meiser for the other food that I have out there. Me, the Levi. And then I give it all to the Kohen. Was hab ich verdient? I did not sell it for a discounted price. No, I have to give away that amount anyway. I didn't lose one pruta. Yes, Vlad, I gave it away, but I would have to give it away regardless. I'm a Levi. If I have 1,000 saw, ich muss geben 100 anyways. I have to give it away anyways. That's the word. If I have it, very good. That's why I kept on. If ve'im lamai sedishin nafla. So if I want, I'm not worse than the Yisrael. The Eitzah of Yumachru lakoyhanim b'demei truma is not being taken away from me. Rebbe is giving me another Eitzah if I'm wealthy. Very good. If I have more Meiser edition produce, that Yikra Shem L'Trumas Meiser, I can declare, even though I don't know what's what. I don't know which one is Truma, which one is Meiser edition. I don't care. I have in here 99 Meiser edition, and by Meiser edition, I don't even have to have Min Hamukov. We already learned. I don't need to have the other 990 here. It can be anywhere. If I know that this season I'm going to have to give, people make money today. People give Trumas Ksafim. You give a Meiser Ksafim. A person knows in their mind, I have to give this money anyways. In other words, why would I sell it b'tmei truma if anyways I'm going to give it? So let me give this away. That's gavaldik. And by the way, v'chein la'ma'aseh sheni oila hegdish nafla. Another eitzah for you not to need. Now, by the way, by ma'aseh sheni you got another issue. Hegdish you got another issue. The good thing about ma'aseh sheni and hegdish, the good thing is that it could be undone. It could be undone. Now, ma'aseh sheni is undone by you being poida it. Remember that? You redeem it. You don't have to take your Ma'aser Sheni to Yerushalmi. If you redeem your Ma'aser Sheni on money, then what is the remaining? What becomes of the Ma'aser Sheni? Chulin. Even Hegdish. Not Koche Mizbeach, but Koche Bedek Habayis could be redeemed. Right? Koche Mizbeach cannot be redeemed. If it becomes blemished, you have to bury it, you got to burn it, other dinim. You can redeem it. What is the Rebbe saying? If you have Ma'aser Sheni and Hegdish, the first thing you do is you bring it back into Chulin. Now that it's Chulin, do the same din we learned before. What's the din that we learned before? Rebbe doesn't have to repeat that. That's the way you'll deal with it. Okay, so that's case number 2, when there's no ratio. Case number 3, the first case of the Mishnah was where the Truma was Temeya and the Chulin was Tohira. Yirkevu. And that we have to get back to. Now let's flip that. Ve'im Temeim Hoyu Oisa Chulin. Okay. Now, what the Mishnah doesn't say, but it's a given, we're flipping it, that the truma is tahoira. Truma is tahoira, falls into chulin tameyin, not enough ratio. Now, what do you have to do? First of all, before the truma and tara, by meduma aviv, what do you got to do with it? You have to basically, you can sell it to the kohen. Fine, but we already learned. B'temei truma. But now, the kohen has chulin tameim mixed with truma tohira. The kohen is not allowed to do something that will bring the truma into the truma. So the Mishnah will give you a couple of eitzah toivas of what, not more than a few options. It's not an eitzah toiva. The kohen may not do something that will make the truma tameya, even though he doesn't know where it is. The truma is tahir, but it's mixed with the chulin. So remember, in the introduction, there are two dinim. Din number one is that for something to acquire truma, it has to become muksher. Obviously, we're speaking about over here grain or flour that was never made wet yet. Challenge is when you make it into food, the way you need a dough is either water or mepetis. That will be one of the options. In other words, the kohen who receives everything will have to be mindful that he may not turn this into a problem, which will be metame the truma. So either option number one, remember the dreams of Yaakov Avinu, Nikudim. Now you have over here Nikudim. Nikudim means little dots. Nikudim would mean small loaves. So very simple. Let's say that the truma that got mixed in the chulin, less than 100, is mixed everywhere. The truma is everywhere. I'm being machmir. Everywhere some of the truma fell in because I made it, I grounded it into flour, and now I'm going to make it into dough. The moment I add water, I got a problem. What's my problem? Because if there's going to be a kibetza amount of chulin, which is tamei, in any place, and it's going to be touching, let's go with the shita of the Rishonim that for something to acquire truma, there is no minimum amount. It's going to make the truma tamei. And b'chal, first of all, you're not allowed to make a tamei. Second of all, then you can't even eat it. Even the kohen cannot eat it. You have to burn it. Who wants to burn it? He wants to eat it. Simple eitzah. Make loaves of bread that are smaller than a kibetza. I don't care that you're putting water into the flour. I don't care that everything is becoming muksher. If when you're doing that, it's only nekudam lach, it's little bilkalach. I'm taka curious to know how much is the bilkalach. According to those people that say that a kazayis is this big, so a kibetza is the size of the room, whatever the shiurim they make, so whatever, make it nekudim. Option number two, who says you have to make it into bread? Oh, it's getting late. Kaloyos. Kaloyos means that you toast the grain. That was a typical way of how people would eat grain. In other words, don't b'chlal mix any water with it. Leave everything grain. And they were, today you call this popcorn. In other words, don't add water. Then you have no problem. Or you can make normal large loaves, but you should be made payers. Don't use any one of the 7 liquids. Yad, shachad, dam is the mnemonic to remember. Use apple juice. Use orange juice. And mamish, it will not become tummy. It's not machshir or anything. So even though the size of the loaves or of the danishes are going to be bigger than a kibetza, I don't care. Or yischalku le'isa kadei shelo yehei b'makom echad kibetza. Let's say I want to make it into bread and I want to use water. Okay. If the kohen has other tahar flour, which will normally be the case, I can make myself, let's say I'm using the quantities, a half a pound of flour for the loaf of bread. Okay, so instead of taking a half a pound, take 40% of a pound and add into it a little bit of this mixture. In other words, the added amount is less than a kibetza. Same idea. So vadai, you don't have over there enough of chulin tameim to add to the tuma. Very good. Now we have enough time. Let's go weiter into another mixture of truma into chulin here, where you do have the ratio. But again, one of the two are tamei, and we'll see how that will affect the din. So again, in the second part of the Mishnah now, truma tameya, Rebbe is being symmetrical, like we had in the first case, not in the last case. The last case was the truma was tohoida, the chulin was tamei. Here it's the opposite. The saw of truma, that's tameya, that yes fell into the right ratio needed of 100. Shenafla lemeya chulin tohoidin. Okay. And I want to add something over here. The chulin over here must be, the chulin here is not yet muksher lekabel tuma. This is very important. So there's no imparting of tuma as of yet. So now, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, Aviv, what's the rule? What do you need to do when you have a mixture that is not meduma? Maila umatir. You got to remove one saw. Says Rabbi Eliezer, you remove a saw. Aber, you know what happens? The one that you remove has to be burned. The kohen cannot treat what he receives from the Yisrael more leniently. Don't forget that the Yisrael began with a saw of Truma Tameya. But the question is why? Why it was nullified? Now listen to his words. It's wow. Sha'ani Omer, saw shenafla, he saw also. This is the Rabbi Eliezer that we quoted before. Think about this. Mitzad echad, it's batal. You kidding? It's batal. Mitzad sheni, and Vlad, even by lach balach. Mitzad sheni, even though it's mixed in 100. Now that the Chachamim paskent, that you have to remove one. So we keep on saying it's a choisha mishpadin. Okay? But it becomes a yoyre deyadin. We view the one that you removed, this is the one. And by the way, there's such a possibility. I don't care how little. It's punkt shayach that exactly what you removed was what fell in there, the truma. And if that is the case, what fell in there was tamei. So even though the kohen is going to be getting his one soft truma, he's not going to be benefiting by the fact that it got mixed. No, what fell in was tamei. Rabbi Eliezer says what he gets is tamei. The Chachamim argue, the Chachamim oimrim, nisht emes, that tala, that the Yisrael removes one saw. That's the din. And now v'sei ochel. Now the kohen gets to eat it. First of all, it's not tamei, but for some reason, again, we'll leave this for the Gemara. When he eats it, he has to fulfill the same options the Mishnah just gave in the case where the truma was tohoira and the chulin was tameya, and you did not have the ratio, either nekudim or koloyos, or yeloishu b'mei peiros, or added into large loaves of truma, large loaves of chulin that are tohor, add a little bit in there. Same concept. That v'siyachal nekudim oy koloyos oy tilus b'mei peiros oy teschalek liyisoyis kadei shalei yehi b'makam echad kebeitza. In other words, the Chachamim argue with Rabbi Eliezer, and they say what they are saying is very logical, that the saw of Truma is nullified. And therefore, even though I have to give to the kohen one saw, we don't view that as Truma Tameya. You know what we look at that as? When I remove one from the mixture of 101. The Chachamim hold, we look at it as Chulin, that's Tahar. Chulin, I'm only giving it to the kohen, Vlad, because I can't steal his food. I had a saw. I have to compensate with a saw, but not like Rabbi Eliezer that views it as truma b'meila tameya. The Chachamim hold, since it's batul, so you view the ta'ale saw as chulin, that's start. That's number one, and therefore, really, the kohen should not have to burn it. Aber, since why is the kohen getting it? The kohen is getting it because he's being compensated for his truma. Mid Rabbanan, they were concerned that if the Chachamim would not give a rabbinic status of truma to it, the owner will never give it. The owner will never give it. People cared a lot about truma, about giving financial. People with financial, they afford themselves. They cut many more corners. So number one, mid Rabbanan, the Chachamim afforded the Sa'ah as a status of Truma. And now, it should be Truma Tohira. Because really it's Chulin, Tohirin. The Chachamim felt people are not going to give it. You know, the Dav's given it's Truma. Problem is, okay, but it should be Truma Tohira. So again, we'll leave this for the Gemara. So the Gemara is going to ask, okay, so at least the Kohen should be able to eat it directly. Why do the Chachamim still add that you have to do the Eitzah of Nikudim and Akudim and Berudim? I mean, basically, that's what the Gemara is going to ask. And here again, we're going to stop over here. We'll leave this question. We have two big questions that we'll have to leave